Page 176. Steele's statements to the FBI about Millian. On September 18 and 19, 2017, FBI personnel from the Mueller Special Counsel investigation interviewed Steele. Steele stated in part that Danchenko had collected election-related material in the United States for Orbis. As part of that undertaking, Danchenko informed Steele that he met in person with Millian on 2 or 3 occasions, in New York and perhaps in Charleston, South Carolina. However, as noted, Danchenko informed the FBI that he had not in fact met with Millian on any occasion and did not correct Steele in that misrepresentation. The evidence obtained by the office. The evidence obtained by the office shows that Danchenko, in fact, never received a phone call or any information from Millian, and Danchenko never made arrangements to meet with Millian in New York. Rather, the evidence demonstrates that Danchenko fabricated these facts regarding Millian. Indeed, a review of his email sent by Danchenko to Millian in the summer of 2016 support this conclusion. The same emails Danchenko failed to provide the FBI when interviewed regarding Millian. Those emails are described below. Danchenko first came to the attention of Millian on May 26, 2016, when Russian journalist Dmitry Zlotarov emailed Millian the following: Sergey, hello. I hope all is well with you, and you are once again in America. It is my recollection you told me that you either have or will have news. Will it be convenient if I call sometime next week? In addition, my colleagues have an acquaintance, Igor Danchenko, who works here in consulting. Through them, he requested I find out if it is okay to get in touch with you. If I understood correctly, it is about Trump and Russia. Can I give him your contact information, email, phone, or just email? Later that day, Millian replied to Zlotarov that he was leaving for Asia on June 10, 2016, and would call him soon. Millian's reply does not mention Danchenko. On July 21, 2016, Danchenko, who appears to have acquired Millian's email address from Zlotarov, sent Millian the following message. Colleagues from RIA Novosti gave me your contact information. You spoke to Dmitry Zlotarov about Donald Trump and his trips to Russia. I want to ask you, what projects was he looking into, or were these just image-building trips for beauty contests? There has been a lot of speculation for months now on this topic. It would be interesting to chat about this topic. It's confidential, of course. I don't have any relationship to media, though, of course, I do have acquaintances here. In any case, it would be interesting if and when possible to chat with you by phone or meet for coffee or beer in Washington or in New York, where I will be next week, page 177. I myself am in Washington. It is also possible by email in Russian or in English. I sent you a request to LinkedIn. There, my work is clearer. Millian did not respond to Danchenko's July 21, 2016 email. In fact, Millian was traveling in Asia at the time Danchenko sent this email and did not return to New York until the night of July 27, 2016. Notably, Millian had suspended his cellular phone service effective July 14, 2016 prior to his travel, and his service was only reconnected effective August 8, 2016. On July 26, 2016, Millian emailed Zlotarov the following: Dmitry, on Friday, I'm returning to Asia. An email came from Igor. Who is that? What sort of person? That same day, Zlotarov responded, Sergey, hello. Do you remember I said that a friend of my colleague wanted to get acquainted with you? You gave permission to give your email. The way I understand it, this is who this is. He and I are not personally acquainted, though. He is, it seems, in my LinkedIn, and I didn't know what he wanted to talk about. If I remember correctly, he works at some think tank in Washington. Millian did not respond to Danchenko's July 21, 2016 email. On August 18, 2016, more than 2 weeks after Danchenko purportedly received the aforementioned anonymous call and allegedly agreed to meet with Millian in New York, Danchenko again emailed Millian stating in part, Hello, Sergey. I wrote you several weeks ago. We are contacts on LinkedIn. Danchenko then described a real estate deal in Russia and inquired about Millian's interest in the transaction. Danchenko closed the email by stating, Right, call. My contact information is below. This email, which post-dated the alleged late July call for Millian, clearly reflected that Danchenko had not in fact spoken with Millian and did not believe he had done so. Specifically, Danchenko's email did not mention a possible call for Millian and did not discuss plans to meet in New York with Millian. On August 24, 2016, Danchenko emailed Zlotarov stating in part, Alesky Bogdanovsky recommended that I get in touch with Sergey Millian. I've read your interviews with him, but for some reason, Sergey doesn't respond. I already asked both him about Trump and also proposed a project in Russia. Page 178. What is your relationship like with him? Would you be able to ask him to reply to me? I could call or write on LinkedIn, but until he responds, I would not like to pester him. By the way, you and I are also contacts there. This August 24, 2016 email to Zlotarev again made it clear that Danchenko had not in fact spoken with Millian in late July. Again, Danchenko's email did not mention a possible call for Millian, did not discuss plans to meet in New York with Millian, and did not inform Zlotarev that Millian did not show up to the alleged meeting in New York. Later that day, Zlotarev responded in part, Igor, hello. Sergey Millian asked me a couple of weeks ago who Igor Danchenko is. I had told him earlier, but he apparently forgot. At that time, he wrote me from South Korea. The thing is that he, based on his own words, now spends more time in Asia than in America. Try to write to him once again. I simply know that he is constantly traveling and could actually have forgotten. The emails quoted above are further evidence that between July 21, 2016 and July 24, 2016, Millian did not call, email, or meet with Danchenko, and Danchenko knew he had not received a call from someone who he believed to be Millian. In addition, in July 2020, the Senate Judiciary Committee released a heavily redacted report of Danchenko's January 2017 interview with the FBI. In the report, Danchenko is only identified as Steele's primary subsource. When the redacted interview was released, Millian had been publicly reported to be a source of certain information in the Steele reports, including the information purportedly collected in late July 2016, alleging that Trump and his campaign were engaged in a well-developed conspiracy of cooperation with Russian officials. The redacted and anonymized interview also indicated that the primary subsource, Danchenko, had received contact information for source 6, which is Millian, from a journalist who had previously interviewed Millian, Zlotarev. Following the release of the interview, Millian began to email Zlotarev, attempting to uncover the identity of Steele's primary subsource. In late July 2020, Danchenko was identified by name in press reporting as Steele's primary subsource. On July 19, 2020, Millian emailed Zlotarev, stating in part, I believe they've already found Steele's source with an internet address. Do you remember such a person, Igor Danchenko? On July 20, 2020, Millian again emailed Zlotarev the following. Page 179. I've been informed that Bogdanovsky traveled to New York with Danchenko at the end of July 2016. Danchenko supposedly to meet with me, but the meeting didn't take place. Can you inquire with Bogdanovsky whether he remembers something from that trip and whether they touched upon my name in conversation, as well as for what reason Danchenko was traveling to New York? Steele, it seems, made Danchenko the fall guy, but Danchenko himself made several statements that were difficult to understand. For example, about the call with me. Did he tell Bogdanovsky that he communicated with me by phone, and on what topic? Thank you. This will clarify a lot for me personally. It's a convoluted story. These 2020 emails between Millian and Zlotarev again point to the fact that Danchenko did not receive a call from Millian in late July 2016. The office also reviewed phone records for both Danchenko and Millian from 2016 and 2017. Those records reveal no communication between Millian and Danchenko. In fact, the office was able to identify nearly every call received by Danchenko during the relevant time frame. Of the small number of calls that could not be identified, none had a duration approaching 10 to 15 minutes. Moreover, as noted above, service to Millian's primary cellular telephone number was suspended at the time Danchenko allegedly received the anonymous call. Further, the contention that Danchenko may have received an anonymous call from someone he believed to be Millian on an internet-based application was not supported by the evidence obtained by the office. Indeed, at no time did Danchenko inform Millian that he could be contacted on an internet-based application, to say nothing of the particular application Millian should use. Rather, the evidence did show that when Danchenko wanted to communicate on an internet-based application, he explicitly communicated that to his contacts and identified the application to use. With respects to the purported meeting with Millian in New York, the evidence obtained by the office revealed that Danchenko had planned to travel to New York during the week of July 24, 2016, prior to even reaching out to Millian for the first time. Indeed, the evidence revealed that Danchenko's trip to New York was a sightseeing excursion with his young daughter. In order to credit Danchenko's versions of the events, one would have to accept that Danchenko, with his young daughter, planned to meet with an unidentified individual at an unidentified bar in a city of 8 million people at night. Finally, the office interviewed Millian. Millian unequivocally stated that he never met with or spoke to Danchenko. When asked if he provided the information reflected in the Steele reports to Danchenko, Millian stated that did not happen. Page 180. 100% did not happen. Millian stated he has received threats to his and his family's safety because of his alleged role in the Steele reports. Fusion GPS implicates Sergey Millian. As discussed above, the office found no evidence that Millian was a source for any of the allegations in the Steele reports. Given that the fact, the office endeavored to determine the genesis of Millian's implication in Steele reports. In particular, what caused Danchenko to first reach out to Millian in late July 2016. To that end, the office reviewed, among other things, records obtained from Fusion GPS and the public statements of Fusion GPS principals Glenn Simpson and Peter Fritsch. Specifically, Fusion GPS records demonstrate that Nellie Orr first identified Millian as having connections to Trump. Orr was a Russian-language contractor employed by Fusion GPS and the wife of department official Bruce Orr. On October 22, 2016, Nellie Orr prepared a report for Fusion GPS that set forth, in part, Millian's connections to Trump. This report was prepared just 10 days after Fusion GPS was retained by Perkins Coie to conduct opposition research on Trump, and prior to Steele being retained by Fusion GPS. Notably, on April 13, 2016, approximately 1 week prior to Orr's report, RIA Novosti published an interview with Millian that was conducted by Dmitry Zlotarev. In that interview, Millian described his alleged real estate connections to Trump and spoke positively about Trump's candidacy. Millian was interviewed by RIA Novosti several more times over the course of the summer and all of 2016. Page 181. On May 7, 2016, Nellie Orr compiled another report discussing, among other things, Millian. All told, Orr prepared at least 12 reports that discussed Sergey Millian. Nellie Orr's reports included Millian's views on how a potential Trump presidency might affect U.S.-Russia relations. Notably, Orr included internet links in the reports to several YouTube videos from 2012 featuring Millian. As discussed above, Danchenko told the FBI that the anonymous caller from late July 2016 sounded like Millian, based on YouTube videos that Danchenko had previously watched. The reports prepared by Orr and others at Fusion GPS were ultimately provided to Crossfire Hurricane investigators by Orr's husband, Bruce Orr. As discussed above, Fusion GPS approached Steele in May 2016. Prior to his retention, Glenn Simpson met with Steele at Heathrow Airport in London and pitched Steele on the opposition research project. Approximately 1 week later, Danchenko contacted RIA Novosti, journalists seeking Millian's contact information. The timing of Danchenko's request to RIA Novosti, on the heels of Steele's meeting with Simpson in London, strongly supports the inference that Fusion GPS directed Steele to pursue Millian. Indeed, by the time of Steele's meeting with Simpson, Nellie Orr had already identified Millian's alleged connections to Trump. In addition to Orr, other Fusion GPS employees also appear to have worked on research pertaining to Millian. While the vast majority of the internal Fusion GPS emails were withheld from the office based on privileged claims by the Clinton campaign or the DNC, the privilege log provided revealed that Fusion GPS employees regularly emailed about Millian, often attaching what appeared to be draft memoranda about Millian or forwarding news articles concerning Millian. For example, on July 1, 2016, Fusion GPS employee Jake Berkowitz emailed a draft memo entitled Sergey Millian, 6/30/16. Page 182. Several weeks later, on July 13, 2016, Berkowitz forwarded the same document to Glenn Simpson. At the same time the research on Millian was being conducted, Fusion GPS was promoting Millian to the press as a key intermediary between Trump and Russia. For example, on June 27, 2016, Fusion GPS principal Peter Fritsch sent an email to Franklin Foer, a reporter at Slate magazine, with the subject line, quote, "We think." The email stated, "This dude is key," and it gives a link. He is clearly KGB. That Minsk State Linguistic University is something of a giveaway. If you are downtown, come by. Fusion GPS's research on Millian appeared to increase substantially in late July 2016. In fact, between July 25, 2016 and July 28, 2016, Fusion GPS employees exchanged several dozen internal emails pertaining to Millian. During this time, Glenn Simpson was in contact with ABC News producer Matthew Mosk about Millian. Notably, emails showed that Mosk had been communicating with Millian since at least July 13, 2016. During the course of this correspondence, Mosk learned that Millian was abroad but planned to return to the United States in late July. On July 26, 2016, Mosk emailed Millian the following: Hello, Sergey. I'm writing to see if you might have any photographs of Donald Trump or Don Jr. visiting Russia from your firm's work with the Trump Organization. We would very much like to be able to illustrate his past travels to and business interests in Russia. Later that day, Millian replied that he only had a single photograph with Trump that had been taken in Miami. In reply, Mosk asked Millian if he would be willing to do an interview with ABC News about his experiences with Trump and proposed to conduct the interview in New York. Page 183. Millian indicated that he would be available to conduct an interview in New York on the weekend or next week I can. While making arrangements with Millian, Mosk emailed Simpson and informed Simpson that he, Mosk, was making arrangements to interview Millian on camera and that he and Simpson should chat. Millian ultimately was interviewed by Brian Ross of ABC News on July 29, 2016. For reasons unknown to the office, ABC News did not air the Millian interview in its entirety until January 2017, after the reports became public. Nevertheless, Fusion GPS continued to send Mosk information about Millian, including Fusion GPS's comprehensive report on Millian dated June 30, 2016. On September 13, 2016, Mosk emailed Simpson and Berkowitz and asked, "What's the most official thing we have showing Millian tied to Trump? That would make it hard for the Trump org to disavow Millian." Berkowitz responded with a screenshot of Millian's Trump Gold donor card that Millian had posted on his Instagram page. Throughout the fall of 2016, Fusion GPS continued to communicate with the media about Millian and Trump. Fusion GPS attempts to tie Millian to Alpha Bank. As discussed in detail below, throughout the summer and fall of 2016, Fusion GPS was promoting to the media an allegation of secret computer server communications between the Trump campaign and Russian-based Alpha Bank. In an attempt to tie Millian to the Alpha Bank allegations, Fusion GPS sought the assistance of Perkins Coie attorney Michael Sussman. In turn, Sussman contacted technology executive Rodney Joffe to determine if Millian had any ties to Alpha Bank. On August 20, 2016, Joffe emailed a fellow technology executive, Tech Company 2 Executive 1, and two academic researchers, University 1 Researcher 1 and University 1 Researcher 2, a document titled Bird's Nest that contained known associates of Trump, page 184. Including the attachment, Bird's Nest 1 document was a description of Millian along with his past mailing addresses, various email addresses, websites, and IP addresses that were associated with Millian. Joffe described the document as the result of significant investigative efforts of IOR's professional team and informed Tech Company 2 Executive 1, University 1 Researcher 1, and University 1 Researcher 2 that other than Paul Manafort, Millian is seen as the most likely intermediary between Trump and Russia. Joffe also specifically called the group's attention to the RussianAmericanChamber.com website. On September 22, 2016, Sussman emailed Joffe and attached a document containing IP location information for RussianAmericanChamber.com. The body of the email was redacted by Perkins Coie based on privileged claims by the Clinton campaign. On the evening of September 26, 2016, Joffe emailed Sussman a message containing the subject line as requested. The body of the email was also redacted by Perkins Coie based on privileged claims by the Clinton campaign. Sussman and Joffe exchanged additional emails withheld for privilege later that night and into the early morning hours of September 27, 2016. Further, on September 27, 2016, Fritsch and Simpson emailed Millian's website, the Russian American Chamber of Commerce, IP lookup information to Eric Lichtblau at the New York Times. As discussed below, during the fall of 2016, Fusion GPS was pressuring Lichtblau to write a story about the Trump Alpha Bank allegations. In the email, Fritsch pointed out that Alpha was the website service provider for Millian's website. However, the office determined that the relevant IP information does not indicate that Alpha Bank is the service provider, but rather Alpha Telecom, a Lebanese-based telecom company, which appears to have no affiliation with Alpha Bank whatsoever. Page 185. The FBI's conduct concerning Millian. From September 2007 to March 2011, Sergey Millian served as an FBI CHS. During that time, Millian reported on matters related to Belarus and Russia. Following, among other things, Danchenko's revelations concerning Millian in August 2017, FBI agents attached to this Mueller special counsel team began investigating Millian to determine what, if any, involvement Millian had in relation to the Russian government's efforts to influence the 2016 presidential election. On January 17, 2019, the FBI closed its case on Millian, noting that the investigation found no confirmation that Millian was directed to engage in activities related to the Russian government efforts to interfere in the 2016 U.S. presidential election. In their reviews with the office, both Otten and Helson expressed skepticism about Danchenko's alleged interaction with Millian. It does not appear, however, that Crossfire Hurricane investigators made any effort to corroborate Danchenko's version of events. For example, it does not appear that the FBI examined either Danchenko or Millian's phone records, nor does it appear that the FBI questioned Danchenko about the implausibility of the meeting he supposedly planned with Millian in New York. Lastly, and perhaps most importantly, nobody from the FBI questioned Danchenko about the incongruity between Millian's vocal support for Trump and his alleged statements to Danchenko. Again, in order to credit Danchenko's narrative, one would have to accept that Millian called Danchenko, an individual he did not know, and provide him with damaging information on Trump during a 10 to 15-minute phone call. In sum, the evidence obtained by the office simply does not support Danchenko's version of events. Nevertheless, despite the obvious infirmities in Danchenko's narrative, the information allegedly provided by Millian remained in the Page FISA application through the final renewal on June 2017. The FBI failure to disclose the OI and include in the Page FISA application Page's role as a source for another government agency. In addition to the inclusion of highly questionable information in the Page FISA applications, the FBI also failed to include highly relevant information in those applications. As discussed in the OIG review, one of the serious errors in the 4-page FISA application was a failure to report that Page had been approved as an, quote, operational contact for at least one other government agency, OGA. During the period from 2008 to 2013, the record reflects that the Crossfire Hurricane investigators had been made aware of this relationship months prior to the submission of the initial Page FISA application in October 2016. In the course of its investigation, the OIG also discovered evidence that, prior to the submission of the fourth and final Page FISA application, the issue of Page's relationship with the OGA was raised with the FBI's OGC by the FBI affiant on that application. Page 186. In particular, the affiant, Supervisory Special Agent 2, sought clarification from Kevin Kleinsmith, the OGC attorney who is working with the Crossfire Hurricane investigators, on what, if any, relationship Page had with the OGA. Kleinsmith inquired of the other agency, received a response stating that Page did in fact have a relationship with it during a relevant time period, altered that response to reflect the opposite, and sent the altered document to the affiant, which the affiant then relied on in making representations to the FISC. After discovering this misconduct, OIG timely informed the Attorney General and the Director of the FBI of the matter pursuant to the Inspector General Act of 1978. Further information about Kleinsmith's activities is set forth below. FBI Attorney Kevin Kleinsmith. From July 2015 until September 2019, Kleinsmith was employed by the FBI's OGC as an Assistant General Counsel in the National Security and Cyber Law Branch. Among other duties, Kleinsmith assisted FBI agents in preparing FISA applications and worked directly with attorneys on OI. In the late summer and fall of 2016, Kleinsmith was assigned to provide legal support to FBI personnel working on the Crossfire Hurricane investigation. In this role, Kleinsmith interacted with the OGA on issues of importance to the Crossfire Hurricane effort. In addition, Kleinsmith provided support to the Crossfire Hurricane investigators who worked with OI to prepare the FISA application seeking authority to conduct surveillance of Page. On August 17, 2016, months prior to the October 21, 2016 approval of the initial FISA application targeting Page, the OGA provided the Crossfire Hurricane investigators a memorandum, the August 17 memorandum, advising that Page had been approved as an operational contact for the OGA for the period 2008 to 2013. The memorandum described the reporting Page had provided to the OGA, including detailing his prior contacts with certain Russian intelligence officers. As discussed in greater detail below, Kleinsmith would later claim to the OIG that he did not recall interviewing the August 17th memorandum and that he did not have access to it in FBI OGC office space. Page 187. Although technically true that the document was not located in OGC space, the document was located at FBI headquarters and available on request to Crossfire Hurricane personnel, including Kleinsmith. The first 3-page FISA applications made no reference to Page's prior relationship with OGA. However, before the FBI's submission of the final FISA application, Page himself publicly stated that he had assisted named government entities in the past. During the preparation of the final FISA application, The affiant on the proposed application, Supervisory Special Agent 2, asked Kleinsmith to ask whether Page had ever been a source for the OGA. On June 15, 2017, Kleinsmith sent an email to Liaison from the OGA Liaison 1, stating, "We need some clarification on Page. There's an indication that he may be a source. This is a fact we would need to disclose in our next FISA renewal. To that end, can we get 2 items from you? 1, source check. Is Page a source in any capacity? 2, if he is, what is a digraph source or whatever type of source he is?" OGA Liaison 1 responded by email that same day and provided Kleinsmith with a list, but not copies of pertinent OGA documents. That list included a reference to the August 17 memorandum the OGA had previously provided to the Crossfire Hurricane team. The liaison also wrote that the OGA uses the digraph to show that the encrypted individual is a U.S. person. We encrypt the U.S. person when they provide reporting to us. My recollection is that Page was or is, but the documents will explain the details. If you need a formal definition for the FISA, please let me know and we'll work up some language and get it cleared for use. Kleinsmith responded that same day to OGA Liaison 1, stating, "Thanks so much for the information. We're digging into the documents now, but I think the definition of the digraph answers our questions." At the time, the exchange between Kleinsmith and OGA Liaison 1 Supervisory Special Agent 2 was on leave, so Kleinsmith forwarded the liaison's email to 2 other Crossfire Hurricane investigators, Special Agent 3 and Supervisory Special Agent 4. Notably, before forwarding the email, Kleinsmith removed his initial email to OGA Liaison 1 that inquired about Page's status as a source, page 188. That same day, Supervisory Special Agent 4 emailed Kleinsmith and OI Unit Chief 1, informing OI Unit Chief 1 that she, Supervisory Special Agent 4, would pull these documents for you tomorrow. In a subsequent reply to Kleinsmith, Supervisory Special Agent 4 suggested the OI Unit Chief 1 may have previously been aware of Page's relationship with the OGA. Later that evening, notwithstanding the information he received from OGA Liaison 1, Kleinsmith told FBI OGC Unit Chief 1 that Page was not a source, but rather a U.S. subsource of a source. Kleinsmith also sent an email to OI Attorney 1, the OI attorney working on the Page FISA renewal, and requested a time to talk the following day. The next day, Kleinsmith and OI Attorney 1 spoke for approximately 30 minutes. Following the call, Kleinsmith forwarded to OI Attorney 1 the June 15, 2017 email from OGA Liaison 1. Once again, Kleinsmith omitted the initial email he sent to Liaison that inquired about Page's status as a source. When interviewed by the OIG, OI Attorney 1 did not recall the substance of his telephone call with Kleinsmith. However, documents reviewed by the office reflect that OI Attorney 1 replied to Kleinsmith's forward of OGA Liaison 1's email and stated, "Thanks, I think we are good and no need to carry it any further." Copying Case Agent 1, Kleinsmith replied, "Music to my ears. The office has found no evidence to indicate that Case Agent 1 went back to look at the OGA documents after he received OI Attorney 1's guidance on the issue from Kleinsmith." On June 19, 2017, Supervisory Special Agent 2, who had returned from leave, exchanged a series of link messages with Kleinsmith regarding Page.